Hello, everyone, and welcome to Acting Sessions. I'm your host, Marco DiGeorge, and I'm the co founder and instructor at Truthful Acting Studios. We're an acting conservatory located in Orlando, Florida. And today I want to talk about, well, first of all, before I get in, just let me know that this is a live session. And as you go through, if you're on here with us live, we do have a chat feature. And in the chat feature, you can talk to us, ask questions, interact with us. Our administrator, Samantha DeGeorge, is on with us as well, and she can be interacting with you during this session. So please, uh, we encourage you interacting. So today's topic, I wanted to talk about where to begin as an actor, or your first steps that you would take as an actor, because getting into the industry can be kind of overwhelming. And just the thought of it is, I want to be an actor, and maybe I want to be in film, or I want to be on stage, or I want to be on television, but where exactly do I start? There's a lot of information out there. So I kind of wanted to break it down and really go through a couple of those things just to help you if you're interested in getting involved, or if you're in the industry and want to figure out how to proceed, what to do. So the first step of this whole thing is to study. Study and train in any way that you can, because that's really where, just like anything, any new skill, you need to learn the skill. So acting is the same thing. There's a skill and an art to it. And both of those components must be cultivated. So you must study. There's a few different ways that you can do this. Of course, the very first way is join a class, an actual in-person class that's in maybe in your area, something that you can attend and learn directly. The benefit of attending an in-person class is that you learn in a group environment, which really helps the art form of this. And it helps you also overcome those fears and the self-consciousness of being in front of others while you're performing. There's a nice energy to it, and so that's, it's just, and also working with an instructor directly. So that's a great thing to do. However, it's also possible that you don't have the means, or it doesn't fit into your schedule, or whatever the reason, you can't take an in-person class. Maybe health reasons. So the second tier of that is then do an online class. So the one thing that has developed over the past couple years and to a pretty high success is the ability to take a class remote online. Now, when I'm talking about online, I mean in the sense of you're actually live in an environment, still working one on one with an instructor, with other students, but you're just doing it remotely on the computer. So that's another option. And then the third way to do it, if both of those don't work, is also there are now what we call remote courses. Now, remote courses would be something where you would, you'd pay for a course and then maybe download it or be part of it, but you can work at your own pace and on your own time. That also has developed quite a bit over the past couple years. And in fact, we are doing the same thing for those students. And that's also another good way to start learning. And it's important to just study, 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 study. And, there's also, attending things like this. This is a free, acting session that you can attend online and start learning those things. You can read books. There's so many acting books out there, with great information. So the biggest thing is just cultivate that talent. It must be done by absorbing as much information as you possibly can. So study, 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 and eventually, hopefully, you can get in then into an in-person class or join a theater, or continue to work on that art practically. Well, the next thing is when you choose to study, the next big question is, well, where do I study or who should I study with? And this is something that you want to make sure you do a little research on. You need to evaluate and choose which instructor or instructors you want to study with. Now, if you're in school, meaning if you're in a high school or a university, you don't necessarily have the option of choosing who your instructor is. You're simply taking those classes, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. High school, college, university, study there, take those classes. But once you get out of of the education system and you're on your own and you're choosing an additional class, well, now you have options. You have options which studio to study with or which conservatory to study with. And what I would say is go and meet and talk to the instructors however you can. Even if it's an online class, request like an online one-on-one and meet with whoever the instructors are, meet with the people of the school, meet with the studio. It's something that we really enjoy doing at our studio is meeting with the students ahead of time because we want to make sure it's a good fit. And what you want is you want to find an instructor that meets your style of learning. And you find somebody who inspires you. Find somebody that you can work with that you feel is going to lift you up and then take you to that next level, that you feel comfortable learning from. It's important to have a good relationship with the instructor so you can have the maximum growth possible. If you tend to work, and I've done this in the past myself, if you work with instructors that don't inspire you, um, or you don't feel safe with, the issue with that is uh, you won't take the creative risks necessary, and that's an issue because art is about taking creative risks, vulnerable risks. We're showing, very true sides of ourselves within the art form, and especially within acting. And so, if you feel restricted, or you feel criticized, or you feel judged along the way, you won't really want to take those risks. However, if you're in a situation, environment, or training with somebody who inspires you to take those risks, who encourages you, and who makes you feel comfortable while doing it, you will choose to take more and more risks. And that's where the growth of an artist really occurs. So take your time and talk to different instructors, talk to different schools, and see who works well for you. If you're interested in our school, reach out to us, and we would love to meet with you and see if we're a right fit for you. And then finally, along with both of those, you're going to study, you got to choose an instructor, but you also have to choose an acting technique that matches you, because there's not a one size fits all approach. There are different styles to acting, and you need one that really matches who you are. I myself teach an approach that has been created and based on something called the Sanford Meisner technique. Sanford Meisner was in the 1900s a very um, profound acting instructor who revolutionized, one of the people who revolutionized the field of acting. And so I adhere to his principles. And simply because they're the ones that, for myself, I found to be the most accessible, the safest emotionally for me, and to be also, some of the most effective training and teaching and acting styles that I've used. So that's what I teach. And but it doesn't mean what I teach is the only way or the quote unquote right way, because there's other methodologies. You could study, the Udahagen approach, or the Stella Adler approach, or a more true to classical training like they teach in London or Australia. And so there's all these different styles of teaching. So along with when you're evaluating your instructors, ask them what they teach. What is their approach? What is their technique that you'll be learning, and make sure you feel comfortable with that as well. So these are some of the very quick basic things. I'm just doing a very kind of a general overview right now because there's so many questions that have been submitted, and I'm going to jump into those pretty quickly because that will help us get along the way. But my biggest answer is where to start, what are the first steps? Educate yourself, train as an actor and as an artist. Once we begin training in the art, we never stop. We evolve over time. And there's an evolution to anything artistic. And this is not just acting. Acting is one of the art forms, much like singing or being a musician or dancing or sculpting or painting or anything. And it evolves over time, meaning we as a human being grow. And while we grow as a human being, so does the artist within us. And so the skills that we have to use for the art will also adapt and evolve over time. And we're constantly changing in that evolution. To me, I find that to be an amazing thing. I find that to be such a positive step or positive thing about being an artist, is because it's never the same thing. We never get to a certain point and just flatten out. We grow and grow and grow through our entire career. And you look at like the older A-list actors that have been around for 30, 40 years, and if you watch their work, their body of work, you can see that consistent and constant evolution. And that means there's always more to do. There's always something new to learn. Uh, and as an artist, there's always some place else to go. And I find that to be extremely motivating, extremely inspiring. Okay, so I'm going to get into the first question about this so we can talk more in detail. And that question is, should we learn as much as we can on free platforms prior to getting training? And this is a question that I do receive from time to time where someone asks me, "Well, I'm interested in taking a class, but maybe I should study online, like on these type of free sessions, or with books or other things. Should I do that first? Do I need to have information coming into a training program?" And what I would say is no, you don't need to do that. You can do that, but it's not a prerequisite. And wherever the program is that you're looking for, I would look at what the prerequisites are. Most of the time for an acting class, no, there's no prerequisite. And for, like for the programs that we teach, there's no prerequisite. And when I say no prerequisite, sometimes we get actors that come in, people that come in that have never done anything. I mean, this is the first thing they've done in acting. And so the way our approach works is we start on the ground level and we build something piece by piece by piece. So it doesn't require any skills coming in. However, we also have actors that come into our program that have been acting for 10, 15 years already. It's like, well, that's okay too. Because the approach, it's not like we're starting at the beginning of acting, we're starting at the beginning of the approach. And then you build from there. But the good news is most acting programs that have a starting point, you do not need any prerequisite for that. With that being said, if you don't have the ability to join a class, yes, learn as much as you can from the free platforms, the online platforms. Then in that case, yes. All right, so next question. I'm in high school. Is it too late for me to start learning acting? Absolutely not. Normally, I get this question for people in their 30s and 40s, and my answer is still absolutely not. But I know there's this misconception about the art where, wow, we need to start when we're a child, right? We need to start when we're very young, maybe in elementary school or at least middle school in a drama program in order to really work your way up. And the great thing about acting, the thing that I personally love about this particular art is there is no age limit. There's no required point for you to start, and there's no required point that you can act up until. So you can start as early as you like, Or you can start. There are actors, in our school. We have students that are in their 70s and 80s. There's no time that's wrong to begin working on an art. And you could even start later in life. Like, let's say you go through your entire life and you like a career and a work, and then you retire, and you're in your 50s or 60s when you retire, and now you want to do something else. Great, acting is a wonderful thing for that, and you can have a successful career doing that even later in life. There is no wrong time to start. So no, high school definitely not. What I would say, if you're in high school, join the drama department though. To see if you can take a drama class, or join a theater class if you have the ability to do that. It will begin getting you involved on being on stage and being in front of others, and it's a lot of fun too, especially in middle school, high school. Those are very fun times in acting. And then if you go on to college or university, the same thing. If you can, take an acting class, a drama class, a theater class. If your school has it, a film class. If you're interested in those things, yes, study that, because it's just very, very fun to do, and you're with peers that are going through the same thing. But also know that if you come out of college or you're in your 20s, you can learn then. If you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s, yes, get involved. If you're later in life than that, yes, get involved. If you have any interest or aspiration to be an actor, get involved. We need actors of all ages, of all types. So it's never too late. So, next question. There is so much to sort through, it's overwhelming. Where can I start? That's what I was mentioning earlier, that when you first decide, it's like, oh my God, I want to be an actor, but what do I do? And you search online where to start as an actor. And if you've ever done that, you know what I'm talking about. There is so much information out there that we have to figure out, like, well, what do I listen to and what don't I? Uh, One of the reasons that we started these sessions, and I've been doing this online now for a little while, but I've also done these in person in the studio for as long as I've had, past decade. I've been doing this, and the reason that we've started these free sessions is because when I started acting, oh so many years ago, uh, it was very difficult even back then. Now, before the internet and before being able to search it up online, but still trying to find information about the industry and how to get into the art and what does it mean and all of those things, we would go to in-person seminars like this, which were a couple hours long, but we'd have to pay money for it. We'd pay $50, $75 per seminar to get some basic information. And so when we started Truthful Acting, we talked about it, me and my instructing partner Rob. We talked about it and said, there's certain information we feel that should be accessible for free, and not just accessible in a format where you can just read about it online, but actually be able to go and talk to somebody. And we wish we would have had that. And that's where this kind of started, this kind of format of being able to come on board, talk to somebody live, ask questions that can be answered specifically, to kind of sort through it, because it can be overwhelming. So this goes hand in hand. So these type of sessions are great. I do these periodically. If you have questions, you can ask me or reach out to us, and we'll answer your questions. There are other instructors, or all over the world, that will do something similar. But look for some of the free things to do that on first. Uh, Aside from that, part of the journey of what I talked about in the beginning, finding a place to study, maybe a class or an instructor that really inspires you, and then a methodology that inspires you. When you're going through that research, those are also great times to ask these types of questions. If you find a good instructor and a good school, wherever you are in the world, if you find something that is really a positive environment, they're going to have no issue answering some of the basic questions for you. And then once you get involved in a class, so much more information is covered, and I mean you'll learn a lot in a little bit of time in the very beginning of this process. So start somewhere, start anywhere. If you're in school, start by taking a class in school. And if not, as I said earlier, find a class. If you're beyond school, find a class to take, find an instructor, find courses that you can take, and just begin learning. Once you start learning, your basic questions will be answered, and then beyond that, you'll have a better feel and an idea of where to go for the other information. Okay, so moving right along. So next question. If I can't attend a class in person, what else can I do? What can I do from home? So in today's society, especially with the health risks, around the world, and just scheduling, uh, financial, there's a lot of different reasons you may not be able to attend a class in person. Completely understand that. Uh, so the things that you can do for home, the first thing, like I've mentioned already, these type of things, the YouTube videos or online sessions like this one, please, we're going to keep doing these, periodically. Attend as many as you can. Beyond that, there are some great books on acting. The the couple that I would recommend, there's one that's called The Intent to Live by Larry Moss. That's a great place to start and read. It's about the just what it means to be an artist and an actor. The Intent to Live by Larry Moss. And the other one is a book that's simply titled Audition, and it's by Michael Shurtleff. And those two books are a great place to start and to begin just learning about what it means to be an actor. So, and there's plenty of other books too. I'm not trying to leave anyone else out, but those are the two that really speak to me, and so it's a good place to start. So, books, online things like this, and then there's also the new medium of online courses. An online course is very similar to what we do in the university. I also teach at the university here in town. And we also have online classes there where a student can take the class online, and it's in modules, and they go through step by step through the course. And it kind of guides you through with video and then text and then some other things. Well, there are now acting courses being created in that same way. We are doing that at Truthful Acting as well. And that's another way that if you can't attend a class in person, you take those on your own time and on your own schedule. Um, so I highly recommend doing as much as you can. And then also something that gets overlooked, play. Play. Anything. Cultivate the feeling of being in the sense and the surroundings of this thing called play, which is a creative environment. And when I mean play, use your imagination. Now you can play anything. Board games. Believe it or not, board games cultivate imagination, play, the feeling of freedom, and working with others in that environment. So you can sit around and play a board game. You can sit around and play something like a role playing game like Dungeons and Dragons. D&D is an amazing way to cultivate imagination, to get into the realm of the same things we do in acting. And then also video games. Contrary to popular belief, video games help create and cultivate imagination as well. Now, of course, everything in moderation. You don't want to be 18 hours in video games a day, but I do recommend playing video games. It helps mentally. It allows you to connect, especially story-based video games allow you to connect to something emotionally, and you're part of that storytelling process. And adaptability, and there's so much that goes into it. So those things are ways for you to to get involved and to do things at home before you can before you're able to take a class in person. All right, so question 5. So, okay, so as a parent, okay, so this is coming in from a parent. What should I be looking for when getting my child involved in acting? It's a very good point. We get approached by a lot of parents of anywhere from like 5, 6 year olds to early teens or teenagers, and they say the same thing. What should we be looking for? What should we be doing? And um, as a parent, obviously you want the safety of your child to be your number one concern. So as the parent, if you're going into a in-person class, talk to the instructor. Go to that school, talk to the instructor, see what they have to say, understand fully what they are teaching, and what your child is going to be learning. Just do an audit, a proper audit of the class. And in addition, if it's early enough and you have the ability in school to get your kid involved in like a middle school or a high school program, do that. It's a great safe way that's in in public education. It's a great way to see, do they like acting? And now you have a teacher in the school system that is guiding them through and showing them the basics. So I do highly recommend that early on. Elementary, middle school, high school. If you have the ability where you are to get your child involved there, do that. And then if they show an interest, if they really show that this is what they want to do, then I would say uh, to get, then get them involved in things that are outside of the school system. There's different education. The inside the school system is much more structured, and it's done in a certain way that we have to teach for the education system. It's graded, it's monitored. There's things we're allowed to teach and not allowed to teach because it's public education. But when you get into a private studio, we can get deeper into the art form. We can work on things like emotional response and psychology and some other things that may not be included in like a middle school or high school. So if you have a child that really wants to do this and has a love for it and wants to go further, then you can start looking at private studios to do that. Biggest thing, keep your child safe, to do your due diligence on that. Any advice for actors who live outside of the United States? Well, for American film, which is where a lot of actors want to get involved in, is American film, uh, you will eventually have to come over here to work. But it doesn't mean you have to be in the United States to learn and to cultivate your art and to build your art. You could be anywhere in the world and work on your acting. So I have the same advice to if you lived in the United States, is that train, the same thing. Train, whether it's online, find a local class. Sometimes you have to go to the bigger cities to do that, but if you're close to a bigger city, find a local acting class wherever you are in the world. If you're not close to a local acting class, online is the way to go. Reading books is the way to go. Uh, so you still have the ability to work on and cultivate all of the skills from wherever you are in the world. So that's a good thing. You do not have to be in the U.S., and we're showing that. I mean, look at some of the best actors come out of other countries. They come out of Europe. They come out of Australia. They come out of South America. I mean, they're really coming from all over the place, right? Asia and Africa. It's a global thing. It's a global art form, which I love. So you do not have to be in the United States. Now, U.S. film or American film, which has more of a worldwide reach in its distribution, that tends to be where people eventually want to go. But theater, local theater, is everywhere. And that is the best place to really grow your art form. Not in film, but in theater, live on stage in front of an audience, and you can affect people that are right in front of you. I I cannot recommend that enough. And the great thing is you don't even have to be in big cities for that. Even in small towns, many of them have local theaters. So get involved and do as much of that as you can, and that's how you'll grow your art. And eventually it will progress and you'll figure out where you ultimately need to be. Okay, so the next question is I really don't watch many movies or plays. Is it still okay? Is it okay to still want to try acting? Of course. Of course, you don't have to be an avid movie watcher or avid theater goer to be involved in acting. Now, I would say at some point, it is good to watch some. Like in your training, you will have to watch some television, some movies, or theater in order to grow and understand what you're doing. But it's not like you have to be a movie buff or something to get involved. You can love the art without being an avid observer of it. And in fact, the more you begin to get into the art of acting, the less time we actually have to be an observer of it because we're actively creating it. So that's a good thing as well. So absolutely, you do not need to watch many movies or plays. Not getting involved initially, but at some point in your career, you will have to as research. Because it's good to know. It's good, part of what I like to say to my students, and part of the homework I give them is if I teach something, especially like in a film class, or I'm teaching voice or even emotion, whatever it might be, I'll say, go look for examples of this. I want you to observe in film, in television, in theater. I want you to observe uh, who's doing this and how they're doing this. And so it's because when it's one thing to practice it yourself, it's another thing to then look at it remotely and then see examples and see what works and what doesn't work. So I tend to use that as more of research than anything else, but it can be very effective. So next question is, what advice do you have for starting with a new monologue? Okay, so this is someone that may either be starting acting or possibly you're in acting, and you want to create a monologue, which you will need to use for certain auditions, typically theater auditions. And so a monologue is, if you don't know what a monologue is a piece of text where just one person is speaking for about a minute to a minute and a half. Right? It's part of a dialogue, but it's just the part of that dialogue where just one person is speaking. So it's for a longer period of time. We call those monologues. And we use those in theater, especially. We use those as an audition process so we can evaluate actors coming in to see how they have a command of being on stage, of using their voice, and making this moment that they're delivering to us, making this very truthful and believable. So that's what monologues are used for. And when you're practicing a monologue, the biggest thing with starting with a monologue is, find something you connect to. If you're pulling, because we pull monologues, typically monologues, what I would recommend is pulling a monologue out of a published play, meaning out of material written for the stage, because that's where we're really using them for. So get your monologues from material published plays that are written for the stage. You can also pull monologues from film and television. They're not always as effective, but you can do that as well. So when you're working with a monologue, though, find something you connect to. Find something you really, really like. And then the key to a monologue is you must learn to really say it. It's not that we're just memorizing it and reciting it. And it's also one of the keys to acting. It's not that we're trying to show what's happening in this moment, but we're really feeling the things that we're saying. We're truthfully trying to communicate whatever story that we're saying or whatever things that we're saying. We're really talking to somebody else. Now, a monologue, typically an actor is standing on a stage looking out over the audience, right, like over top, like on a spot on the wall, and we're out of our imagination talking to somebody. But even though it's out of your imagination, even though there's no one really standing across from you that you're talking to in a monologue, we have to see it in our mind's eye. It still has to be there. We still have to really be talking and then really taking in what their reactions are. Now, of course, they're not there, so we have to imagine that, see it right now. How is somebody responding to you? How are they feeling about what you're saying? How are they reacting to the things that you're saying? These are all very important pieces of it. So that's the part of really starting with a monologue. One, choose something you like, really deeply memorize it as best as you can, and then really learn how to really talk it. So the best thing to do with monologues is find an acting partner, find somebody, it could be anybody, but once you have the monologue inside, say it to them. Really say it to them because that will get you into the feeling of really talking, and then really listening to how they are responding. And I would practice it in that way. So that way, when you're standing on stage, you have that experience already of authentically and truthfully talking to somebody. So that's the best thing to do with a monologue. Ooh, here's a very important question. How can I work on my self-confidence? One of the things of acting, and it's one of the reasons why I really love the Meisner technique, is that Sanford Meisner said it when he created his whole approach, which is based in psychology. He said that actors, just like all human beings, are self-conscious, meaning we're very we lack self-confidence. We're self-conscious, worried about what we're doing, and worried about what other people are thinking about what we're doing. And because of this self-consciousness, we don't have the ability to be outward focused and listen to the world around us, meaning it will pull us away from really talking and then really listening. We'll lose that ability simply because we're focused on ourselves. And so the approach is learning how to take the focus off ourselves and put it on the world around us. So to think about self-confidence, confidence is believing that you can do something well. It's a belief in the self, a faith in yourself, a trust in yourself that you can do something well. And so, in order to work on self confidence, we have to work on the self. Now, I think acting does that. I think all of the art forms really do that, but acting, especially because it's a psychological approach. Psychological in the sense that we learn so much about our human psychology to step into the art form. That's part of kind of built into the approach. If we think about, we're going to be stepping into these things called characters, who are really just other human beings. Well, to effectively do that, we have to understand their psychology, their worldview, their fears, their hopes, their desires, their obstacles. We have to really understand that. But in order to understand them, we have to also understand ourselves first. So, working on acting, to me, is an amazing way to work on your self confidence. Because as you learn to take the focus off of yourself and move it to the world around you, you build your self confidence in the meantime, like right at the same time. So I love art as a way to work on the individual. And you can do this with any art form, with music, with dance, with painting and sculpting. You can do it with any art form. But for me, I find acting to be very therapeutic in its process. And this, of course, does go along with finding a proper instructor that motivates you and inspires you, and finding a proper approach that makes you feel, good as well, good inside as well. Because there are approaches and instructors out there who do teach from criticism and judgment, and that's going to cause you to close off, right? It's going to cause you to close back off, and to possibly have a lack of self-confidence. So you need to make sure you find that instructor and find that approach that helps you open up, and you'll feel it. You'll feel it immediately, whether this makes you feel good or makes you feel, bad or closed off. And one other thing about this, self-confidence comes from accomplishment. Now, we can't immediately have accomplishment. We have to work toward accomplishment through repetition, doing something over and over and over again, and by struggling initially. So if you do something and early on you struggle, that's okay. Don't let that stop you. Because the early struggle, if you push through it and do it again and you do it again, even though you're going to struggle, once you get past that struggle and you can do the thing that you once struggled with, that is confidence. So what I would say is, even if you're afraid of something, if you have a desire to do it, do it. Even if you do something and you don't do it well, which we tend to call failure. I'm going to put failure in quotes because I don't really believe in that as failure. Uh, but that's part of the human struggle. But even if you do fall short, do it again. If you fall short, do it again. Do it again. Do it again. If you desire it, keep doing it. Don't stop. Every time you struggle and you do it again, you're going to grow. And then you struggle and you do it again, you're going to grow. And you're going to keep learning, and it's going to get better and better and better and better. And then finally, you're going to be able to do it without the struggle. And man, you're going to feel great about that. And that is your self-confidence. So just make sure you don't stop, or you don't allow the fear to pull you back from that. All right. So the next question. As a beginner, what other tools should we be working on? Example, writing, reading, emotions, memorization. Okay, so if you're first starting out, and this is again coming back to take a class or study online, but learn from people that have come before you. That's number one, because some of those things that you're going to learn initially will answer some of these questions. However, some other things that you can work on that are outside of acting, or on your own. Uh, Number one to me as an actor is reading out loud. So reading is important, but reading silently is much different than reading when you're verbalizing it, when you're reading something out loud. So I would highly recommend, and this is easy to do, meaning it's free for you to do, and you can do it from anywhere, anytime, or most times, is pick up something. This could be a novel. This could be short stories. This could be a script. It could be essays. It could really be anything. But pick up something and read it out loud. This could be poetry. It could be literally anything. And because as an actor, this is one skill that we use the most often, is reading off the page. And the thing about it is, if we have something and we're reading off the page, it needs to sound like we're saying it authentically, right? We want to be able to read off the page without it sounding like we're reading off the page. Because we do this in auditions, we read off the page. We do this in script reads, we read off the page. In table reads, we read off the page. Voiceover actors have to read off the page. I mean, just so many instances in our acting, we are taking text from a page and very quickly interpreting it and then saying it out loud. So that is the number one tool I would say to use. Plus, reading off the page works on your voice. It works on your confidence. It works on your mental capacity. It works on so many things. And eventually that will lead into being able to memorize faster, because the faster we can interpret words, the easier it is to then memorize them. And because it also works on your self confidence of being able to interpret very quickly and then say words, it will also work on some other capacities like emotion, outward focus, those things as well. All from simply just reading out loud. Now, if you can read out loud with an audience, now when I say an audience, if you have people in your own family that you just pick up a book and read it to them. Because now you're also not only just reading out loud, you're reading out loud with intention. The intention is to convey the story to somebody else, which is the next step to that. So I would first start by reading out loud, even just by yourself, and then read out loud with intention, either by yourself or with an actual audience. Make sure you're reading out loud, but to get other people to understand what you're saying. That is storytelling. And that is what we do. That's the greatest art form that crosses all the boundaries, music and paintings and writing and acting, and it's all storytelling. Filmmaking, theater, it's all storytelling. So uh, that's why we need to work on that. And you can do it every single day. I can't recommend it enough, and it's part of the homework I have in a few of my classes. Read out loud. All right, so the next question. Do I have to live in Los Angeles or New York to be an actor? No, you do not. And this is a common question, not just if you're here in the States, but across the world is like, do I need to live there? And it was kind of my similar answer to what I had about, what do I do if I live out of the United States? You do not need to live in LA or New York. Now, I will say that yes, the main film industry here in America is in Los Angeles. Secondary is in New York, and New York is our main theater community because of Broadway. But it doesn't mean those are the only two places you have to live. While you're learning the craft, you can be just about anywhere in the US. We have access to acting classes, and anywhere in the world, there are acting classes all over, and then plus you have access to the online acting classes, as I've mentioned before. You do not have to live in LA or New York. Now, it doesn't mean that at some point in your career, you may not choose to move to LA or New York and be closer to the action of what's going on. You may decide that that's a good move for you. But there's acting that occurs all over the place. And you don't have to be in one of these two cities to make it work. Theater occurs all over the world. So you can get involved in theater anywhere. And theater is local, meaning even in New York and Broadway or in London, if you're, at one of the great theaters there, sure, those are bigger theaters, more world renowned theaters, but they're still local. I mean, the people who go attend are still right there in the city. And so it doesn't matter if you're in Toronto or if you're in Chicago or, anywhere in the world. If you're in Melbourne, Australia, it's like just get involved in the theater next to you because theater is theater is theater. It's all the same thing. It's all about preparing a story that's going to go on stage live in front of an audience and then telling the story to the best of our ability, hopefully to affect that audience. You can do that from anywhere. And then film, there's film that's made in many, many, many parts of the world. Now, I know it's not necessarily American film, but it doesn't mean you can't learn the aspects of it from anywhere and do some great work. All over the world, there is some great film being made, especially on the independent level, which simply means outside of the studio systems. It's privately done, but there is some wonderful, wonderful artwork being done all over the world, and you can get involved in that. And then if for some reason your path does take you to LA or New York, because that's really where you want to be in your career, then so be it. But what I tell my students when they ask, should I move to LA or should I move to New York? My question to them is, do you want to live there? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I say, well, if you're moving there only for a career, meaning you don't really want to live in LA, but you're going to move there because you think it's going to help your career, then no, that's not a good enough reason to move. Because most of the time you spend will be outside of that. It's your daily life, where you're going to sleep, where you're going to wake up, where you're going to walk around the community and be involved, where you may or may not have a family, but friends, or right, you know what I mean? All of those other life things that you're going to go through are going to be in wherever you're living. That is important. In your own happiness, you need to be happy with where you are. If you go to New York, New York's an amazing city, but it gets cold in the winter. And it gets hot in the summer, right? There's these very, crazy fluctuating temperatures. Are you okay with that? If you are, then great. Then New York is a fantastic city, but it is very busy. Are you okay with that? LA, same thing. LA has much better weather, but it is very congested in the city of LA. The traffic is very difficult to navigate. And are you okay with that? Is that really where, is that where you want to live? So I always tell all of my actors, live where you want to live, not where you think you should live. Because otherwise, if you live where you think you should, you'll have a resistance to your day to day life. You'll always be waiting to reach the destination of quote unquote making it as an actor. And so it will pull away from your day to day experience simply as a human being. It's much better to find happiness in the journey, in the day to day life. So, anywhere in the world you want to live there, and then find a way to get involved in that acting community. And ultimately, when you look back on your life, you'll be so much happier you did it that way. And then this will probably be our last question, since we're almost approaching time. But are high school or college classes enough, or should I take additional classes? I think what they mean maybe afterwards or in addition to. And what I would say is high school or college classes are the place to begin if you decide to start at that age. If you're in high school and decide you want to try acting, yes, take those classes. Or college, yes, join film or theater or one of those classes to learn. Those are wonderful to do. But are they enough? I would say no. And similar to my conversation earlier, that we never stop learning as an artist. We never stop evolving as an artist. I think that's what this is as well. To answer this as well is that's where we begin the process. We begin it in academia, and we start in high school or maybe college. And but then even when you get out, even if you have a theater degree from a university, you still should study in a conservatory. A conservatory is basically a school that has a deeper level of study, a deeper process of study. That's what a conservatory is. It means it's focused in its training. So at Truthful Acting, we're a conservatory. Students can train with us 3 to 4 years as they go deeper into the process. It's more of uh, a full process. Even if you get a theater degree, still study at a conservatory or take ongoing classes. There are things we can teach in a conservatory that they cannot teach in a university, just because there are things that we can teach that are outside of having to grade it. In a university, so when I teach at the university, I have to have a grading system because it's how education works. I need to be able to evaluate a student who is earning credit points toward a degree. And so we evaluate and they earn those credit points by passing or failing the class, right? If they pass the class, they earn the credits. If they fail the class, they get denied the credits. So in order to pass the class, I have to have evaluation points that are gradable. And so in an art form, though, there's many things we teach that are not gradable. We don't evaluate on that type of scale. And that's where when you get into conservatory, you can work on those things. Uh, so yes, continue studying. Never stop learning. In fact, as a human being, keep yourself in a learning state, meaning always keep yourself curious to learning more. That's how we ultimately grow and get better and evolve. And as an artist, that's really where we want to be. So to kind of sum up everything, I know this, where to begin. Uh, if you're here now and this is the first thing you're doing, then you've already begun. This was your first step, and congratulations on that. And then keep doing more. We have an entire library on our YouTube account. If you search Truthful Acting on YouTube, you'll get to our account, and you can see we have so many different sessions already on there from our past ones that we've done. You can watch those, and other material that I put online. You can watch that. That's all free to you. There's also so much else out there in the online environment that you can begin studying and begin looking at, and learn as much as you possibly can. Highly recommend that as well. Read books and just play. Create your own art. You can create your own art at home. And what I mean by that is, as kids, we used to do this. As kids, we used to put on skits for family. We used to just create like little stories and little skits, and then maybe in holidays or family gatherings, we'd perform it in front of them. That's art. That's acting. You can even do that. So don't allow yourself to stall in your training just because you can't join an actual in-person class or you really don't know what to do. Just keep creating in any way possible. Keep joining things like this. Learn as much as you can. Ask the questions that you need to ask. And little by little, as you gain that information, you will know what your next step needs to be. If you do want to reach out to us, you can contact us at the information below. We have our email address here, info@truthfulacting.com. You can email us, and if you have any questions, even ongoing from this session or anything else, we like to be a resource for the overall acting community. So if you have a question and you didn't feel it was answered here or anywhere else, you can reach out and say, hey, can you help me with this? And we will respond back to the best of our ability and answer that question for you. You can also call or text us at the number below. Samantha, who's our administrator, also runs the studio. She's the one that you will reach when you call or text. Feel free to reach out, ask any questions that you have, whether it's about our school, our program, or any other questions that you may have. We would absolutely love to hear from you. And otherwise, we will have our next session in a few weeks. So be on the lookout for that. We'll be posting it on our website very soon, what the topic will be. And I'd love to have you back and talk to you again. Until then, please have hopefully a very fun time, have a creative time, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.